So we'll put a little extra in the plate. Maybe we'll turn the heat on next time. Okay, so our verse, Genesis 23:1. Now Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. The reason I picked out that verse, I was just wanting to talk about the years we all get on this planet and what we do with them. It's going to lead us to the topic of legacy. Have you ever looked at like a headstone, or can I say headstone? Is that okay? I didn't know if that was like politically correct. Anyways, you see a birth.
Pizza, don't you know that?
Yeah. You see a birth date, you see a dash, and you see the date of death. Well, all of our life, believe it or not, is what occurs in the dash, in that time frame. It's different, the length from one life to another. But everything we do within that dash will actually matter for eternity. So I want to kind of talk about legacy. One of my favorite authors talks about being a spectator at her own funeral. Okay? And they're like, well, you can't really do that. Well, she did it, and this is how she did it. So she tells about the time when she turned 30 years old for her 30th birthday. Her best friend pulled up in the car and kidnapped her on her birthday. Well, she didn't think too much of it because her husband acted like nothing was wrong and just kind of went along with the whole thing. So her best friend drives her across town. They pull up to a house, and of course there's cars outside. And this is where you play the, oh, surprise me, you know, number. And she's like, so of course I'll act surprised. I'll play along. So she goes in the house. Well, the second she walks through the front doors, the friend that drove her there ignored her. No one talked to her that was at the house. All the women were dressed in black.
Oh my.
They all had on gloves and hankies. They were passing Kleenex around. They sat her down in a chair. There was organ music playing. She said they could have won a performance, an Academy Award for their performance of wailing and crying. And then her, how does she word it? She says, the eulogy was comprised of every embarrassing moment of her teaching that Bible study group. And they just roasted her, one woman after another, the entire time. They gave her, for her greeting card, a funeral guest book that they all had signed. And she said, the best gift she's ever been given. They don't come with ribbons and bows. They come with memories like that. And it was hilarious how she tells the story. So, and I think, who says church women can't have fun? You get a bunch of crazy Bible study ladies together and you got a good old time. So, yeah, we get a little too rowdy. But I wanted us to kind of get that fuel going for our own thoughts. What would be said of you after you're no longer here? What legacy will all of you leave? What legacy will I leave? So we're going to look at legacy. According to the dictionary definition I put on your notes, a legacy is a gift by will of money or real property. It can also be something transmitted by or received from an ancestor. So something transmitted by or received from an ancestor. That's your first blank. Or predecessor from the past. I'm going to boil that down to essentially what we're talking about today. I'm not focusing on the gift of money or property within a will. In other words, legacy means, and this is in your notes, accomplishments, beliefs, actions, and guidance you demonstrate in your lives, and here's your next blank, that carry forward to future generations. Legacy is the accomplishments, beliefs, and actions and guidance that you demonstrate in your lives that carry forward to future generations in a fashion which allow those members to adopt and adapt them to make their lives meaningful and fruitful. So that's kind of the working definition and concept we're going to go through forward when we talk about legacy today. I have a hard time finding legacy in the Bible. I actually, in my NASB, I was only able to find the word legacy in one verse in Ecclesiastes, only one verse. But legacy is related to the concept of inheritance and heritage in the Bible. So it's not necessarily a common used word within the Bible, but it relates to those concepts of inheritance and heritage in the Bible. How many of you have ever heard Dave Ramsey? Have you gone through any of his courses? Okay, you'll hear him say this verse a lot, Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Anyone ever heard him say that? It's in his spiels. I'm not talking about the way Dave Ramsey is using that in giving our loved ones financial security. That's not what we're talking about today. We're going to go with that, the concepts that will carry down to future generations of beliefs. So we're going to go with that. So legacy is what you leave behind. What will endure when you're gone? What will you leave behind? What gift, that's your next blank, what gift will you leave for those who knew you? I want to read a super short story for you. My friend Vicki in my group, she gave me a book to read about Mr. Rogers' life, and I was like, I'm a child of the 80s, I'm game, I'll read it. So it's Amy Hollingsworth's book, The Simple Faith of Mr. Rogers. Super easy read, enjoyable, quick book. So The Simple Faith of Mr. Rogers. Here's a short excerpt from it. One particular memory of Fred Rogers when he was a 5-year-old little fellow who would frequently visit his elderly neighbor known as Mama Bell. As a youngster searching for yummy snacks, he knew he would always find something tasty at Mama Bell's, an elderly neighbor. One of his favorite snacks she served was toast sticks. One day she asked if he would like to make them on his own. He was excited by the thought of it. Hollingsworth writes, imagine his delight at being able to master what seemed like a grown-up task, as well as his pride at being entrusted with Mama Bell's specialty. Shortly after this opportunity for Freddie, as Mama Bell called him, to learn each step in making toast sticks by toasting the bread, spreading the butter, slicing the toast, and finally adding a dollop of jam, Mama Bell became sick and died. Hollingsworth states, toast, and this is a quote, toast sticks may seem like a simple legacy, but they had a profound effect on a young boy. Where Mama Bell entrusted this gift of toast sticks to Fred, which would comfort him and remind him of their unique friendship long after she was gone. Mr. Rogers had left us the gift of toast sticks, but of a different nature. He has left us toast sticks for the heart, for the eyes, for the hands, says Hollingsworth. Here's another quote. Sustenance is to be shared. Everyone can pass on what he or she has been given by another. And I really liked this story. It just made me think that if you can toast bread, you can leave a legacy. I mean, who can't toast bread? Even your husbands can do this. If they're afraid of the kitchen, they can still toast bread. But if you're even able, I don't have it plugged in, so I can't really toast it. But if you're able to toast bread, you can leave a legacy. And I had to actually wipe this thing down. It was a mess. So I'm glad I had to bring it in today. My husband's like, is that our toaster? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. Just walking out the door with the toaster. I want to encourage you in regards to legacy, just like Mama Bell, you may not think you have much to offer. You may think, what is a piece of toast in the grand scheme of things? But offer to another, it's something you're passing down, you're giving to another that has tremendous value, that sustenance that we hand down. I was speaking to a gal from my home group, and she's our home group hostess, and she said, there is a tremendous need. She's a leader in the Real Life Moms group. They're not meeting right now because they just got done. I think last week was their last week. They'll start again in April. But she said you would not believe the tremendous need. The younger moms, who are typically across the hall down there in the bigger room, they're looking for mentors. mentor, and one of the participants told my friend, I don't know where to find one. I don't know where to find a Christian mentor woman. And my friend, her name's Hallie, she said, I know where they're at. She said, they're in Pursue. Just like that. And I was just like, you know what? Everyone in this room has something to give. And if you are interested in just even having lunch, going to coffee, going on a walk with any one of those young moms, however it looks, let me know. I'll hook you up with my friend Hallie. It's just something I wanted to throw out there because there's a real need for older women mentoring the younger women. It's invaluable, that gift we give. Okay, so we're going to move on with this topic of legacy. And okay, so where are we at? Okay, so how you live now impacts what you leave later. I liked this quote by Matthew Henry. It ought to be the business of every day to prepare for our final day. It ought to be the business of every day to prepare for our final day. How many of you subscribe to the newspaper? You get the press, you get the spokesman. Okay, there's like 5 of us. Cool. We'll hang out later. So I get the paper and I read the obituaries every time they're in there. I don't know. Am I normal? Like, did anyone read it? Thank you. Like, I'm just like, I just read them. I don't even know these people and I'm reading them. Well, one obituary I read, this was like, I had to Google it to find out how long ago this was. It was actually August 2017 when I read this obituary, and one line of this obituary has always stuck with me. And at the time I was like, I should cut this out, but I don't know the person. Is that weird? So I didn't cut it out, but it just stuck with me because I wasn't sure on protocol for that.
I don't think there is one.
I know, I was like, I'm just weird. But one I'll never forget, it was the wife, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was the wife of a local artist. I believe her name was, well, the last name was Shortridge, so it was, I think, Stephen Shortridge. Did you know her? Okay, so please tell me if I'm correct on this one. Her obituary has always stuck with me when I read it. From what I understood, did she have stage 4 lung cancer? Okay, so from what I remembered, this woman was terminally ill, and in the obituary, what I read was a quote that I loved, and it said, and she was famous for saying this apparently within her cancer diagnosis. She said, I'm not terminal, I'm eternal. Is that correct? Okay, that has always stuck with me, that perspective of even at the end of what is perceived to be her earthly life here. She said, I'm not terminal, I'm eternal. And I just, I loved that perspective and that way of looking at things. If you would open with me to Ecclesiastes 3:11. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Bibles are too heavy, they're weighing down this wimpy podium. I'm going to be on the floor before too long. All right. Okay, Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11. This verse has been popping up in things I've read multiple times recently, so I'm like, yes, Lord, I will share it today. Ecclesiastes 3:11. He has made everything appropriate in its time. He has also set eternity in their heart, yet so that man will not find out the work which God has done from the beginning even to the end. That God has set eternity in the heart of man. I just love that. That's what jogged my memory of that beautiful woman's obituary, that I am not terminal, I'm eternal. I think, ladies, we can be an example. We can put forth even an inspiration, not just by our lives, but even by our death here on earth. I mean, that has stuck with me, and I did not even know that precious woman. So, I just wanted to share that. So Ecclesiastes 3:11 was where that was found. I want to talk about different types of legacies we can leave here as we are, if we are believers. There's numerous ones, so I had to kind of narrow this puppy down. So a few of the types of what I'm going to call eternal legacies would be the legacy of sincere faith that should be on your notes. So I'm going to call this one the legacy of sincere faith. And to that effect, we're going to read 2 Timothy 1:5 to kind of look at a legacy of sincere faith. What does that look like? Second Timothy 2:1, verse 5. For I am mindful of the sincere faith within you, which first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am sure that is in you as well. So we're looking at strong faith lived out impacts future generations. I loved how it was just kind of a natural assumption that I'm mindful of that sincere faith that's within you, that first dwelt in your grandma and your mom. It's just, I love that connection there. So we're going to also look at the fact of Acts 16:1. It tells us that Timothy, who Paul was speaking to, that Timothy was a son of a Jewish woman who was a believer. That information was found in Acts 16:1. Timothy was taught, that's your next blank, was taught from childhood, literally infancy, the truths of the Old Testament scriptures. And you can refer to Acts 3:15 on that. Timothy was taught from childhood, literally infancy, the truths of the Old Testament scriptures. So we don't arrive on this planet just knowing it all. We need to be taught. We need to be taught some serious business here. We need to be taught not just things of the walking and talking and the eating and washing your hands and going potty. We need to be taught truths of the Old Testament scriptures. That is something that is a gift that you can give younger generations, that legacy of sincere faith. Pass on what you have. I'm not saying everyone's going to listen, but do your part. Pass on what you have to those younger generations. It will impact future generations, whether it's your own grandchild or children or another. Mama Bell was not Fred Rogers' grandma. She was an elderly neighbor of his, but she impacted future generations to come just by her interactions with them. So you do have to interact with younger generations, is also part of that deal. I want to look at the legacy of one who fears the Lord. That kind of sounds weird, but I've been in this study on fear of the Lord. Oh, this was a side note here. I kind of put it in the wrong spot, so I'm just going to get through it in my ill-written notes. Sarah was physically beautiful. This is something that stood out to me. But the hidden person of the heart is a beauty that never decays. So we had read even in your groups today that last question you had. We looked at 1 Peter chapter 3 and talked about that, the beauty, the hidden person of the heart. Well, that was beauty that never decays. So that is one of your blanks. And I won't read the 1 Peter 3 because you guys probably read that within your groups and in your homework. Okay, so back on track to legacy of one who fears the Lord. I just recently got some birthday money, Amazon, and so I was like, well, of course you need a Jewish study Bible when you get some birthday money. So I'm a Bible junkie. I'm sorry, I'm just like, my husband's like, do you need all those? Like, we study so differently. So I got this Jewish study Bible, but I love the context it puts things in to like bring my Western mind into the culture of the day to give it some Jewish context. So I was reading Proverbs 31:30, and I'll read that to you. Grace is deceptive, beauty is illusory. I think that's like fleeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It is for her fear of the Lord that a woman is to be praised. Grace is deceptive, beauty is illusory. These aren't words I use. It is for her fear of the Lord that a woman is to be praised. So I look at my little note down here about the whole chapter 31 in Proverbs, and it says this: the poem is traditionally recited by Jewish men to their wives on Sabbath evening. Okay, can someone help me on the wording of this? Before the Kiddush?
Yeah.
Kiddush? Okay. The sanctification of the Sabbath over wine. This is the part that makes me chuckle if I was to picture my husband doing this. It is often recited, oh, this part I wouldn't laugh at, sorry, it's the next part. It is often recited at funerals of women. Okay, and sometimes, this is the part that's funny, sung to the bride at her wedding. Oh. I could not picture my husband singing Proverbs 31 to me on my wedding. I was just like, I didn't sign up for this. So I was like, that's really interesting. That is really cool, though, that this is recited by the Jewish men to their wives. I'm like, man, way to put her up there. Recited at the funerals, and sometimes sung to the bride at her wedding. I was like, I feel Jeff now at my wedding. I wanted him to have a little solo in it.
Well, you could always do it again.
Well, all right, so.
Same to you.
Yeah, right, he would die. Okay, so on your notes there, I made a note. Earthly accomplishments and achievements will be forgotten, and earthly inheritance will fade away, but a woman who fears the Lord is a wise and rare find. That's something, ladies, that like if you look at all of the things the Proverbs 31 woman was doing, my takeaway on that one is that the fear of the Lord is the culminating virtue of the woman of strength as shown in Proverbs 31. So I'm not going to get too hung up on going afar and get the purple thread and the merchants, and I don't know, there's a lot going on. I just shop on Amazon, so I'm not really hitting this level yet. But the culminating virtue of the woman of strength, as shown in Proverbs 31, was that she had the fear of the Lord. So I just really liked that, and I've never noticed that before. If you could open up to Psalm 103, we're going to be in verses 13 to 17. I'm sorry I'm flying through this, but there's just too little time. So Psalm 103. To 17. Just as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. For he himself knows our frame. He is mindful that we are but dust. As for man, his days are like grass. As a flower of the field, so he flourishes. When the wind has passed over it, it is no more, and its place acknowledges it no longer. But the loving kindness of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him, and his righteousness to children's children. I looked up a term regarding the transitory nature of life. That's a mouthful. Transitory basically just means temporary, brief, short, impermanent, momentary, fleeting, passing, and fading. This life is fleeting, ladies. We must have the fear of the Lord. That is a legacy that you can pass on, having and living this beautiful virtue, the fear of the Lord. Okay, we're going to look at the legacy of what God has done. That's our last and final legacy we're going to focus on today. You guys could come up with dozens more, I know. The legacy of what God has done. What do I mean by legacy of what God has done? I need to refer you to Psalm 78, 1 through 8, and I'll read it to you if you want to get there, or you just want to hold tight and listen to it. It's all good. So the legacy of what God has done. Listen, O my people, to my instruction. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not conceal them from their children, but tell to the generation to come the praises of the Lord, and his strength and his wondrous works that he has done. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should teach them to their children. Verse 6, that the generation to come might know, even the children yet to be born, that they may arise and tell them to their children, that they should put their confidence in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. Concluding in verse 8, and not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not prepare its heart, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. As you look at your notes, there's a few thoughts down below of what was to implore them to do what exactly, but it's kind of encapsulated in this: to teach future generations about the past, to teach them about the present. And I just listed those three: to implore them to put their confidence in God and not forget God's great deeds, to observe his commandments as stated in the text, to remind them to not be like those wayward and defiant generations. In closing, I'd like to share a few thoughts from Max Lucado. Came in my inbox last night, perfect timing. He didn't send it to me, by the way. We're not talking right now. But I got this email with this in it. A friend of the late American jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes asked him why he had taken up the study of Greek at the age of 94. Holmes replied, well, my good sir, it's now or never. When J.C. Penney was 95 years old, he affirmed, my eyesight may be getting weaker, but my vision is increasing. Growing old can be dangerous. The trail is treacherous, and the pitfalls are many. One is wise to be prepared. You know it's coming. It's not like God kept the process a secret. It's not like you are blazing a trail as you grow older. It's not as if no one has ever done it before. Look around you. You have ample opportunity to prepare and ample case studies to consider. If growing old catches you by surprise, don't blame God. He gave you plenty of warning. He also gave you plenty of advice. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. That's Matthew 10:39. There are two ways to view life, Jesus is saying, as something to protect or something to pursue. The wisest people are not the ones with the most years in their lives, but the most life in their years. There is a rawness and a wonder to life. Pursue it, hunt for it, sell out to get it. Don't listen to the whines of those who have settled for a second-rate life and want you to do the same so they won't feel guilty. Your goal is not to live long, it's to live. Time slips, days pass, years fade, and life ends. And what we came to do must be done while there is still time. We would think it bizarre for a traveler not to be prepared for the end of the journey. We would pity the poor passenger who never read his itinerary. We'd be bewildered by someone who thought the purpose of the trip was the trip. Others, however, are anticipating the destination. I hope you are, and I hope you'll be ready when you get home. For you, age is no enemy. Age is a mile marker, a gentle reminder that home has never been so near. I just thought that was a neat perspective. And in closing, I'm going to read to you a short psalm. This is your blessing to go on your day. It's short. And you're like, short song? What should we pick? 119. Yeah, I know. I was like, that would be like, no, 119. No, 119. Okay. I'm going to read to you Psalm 121. And this last night, I was walking out to close up my chickens at the chicken coop, and the Lord just brought this verse to my mind, and I had to share it with you because I was blessed. I will lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where shall my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not allow your foot to slip. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will protect you from all evil. He will keep your soul. The Lord will guard your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forever. Have a blessed week, ladies. Don't come next week.